That's right. You heard the whistle, and it's that time again. That time to talk some football because, well, at this time, I don't really want to talk about NCAA basketball. Thanks, Virginia. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Virginia.
Exactly, and Arizona too. Need I forget
Yeah,
them?
yeah.
But again, it's a great time for football for all of us who
Uh-huh.
have had blown up brackets because it is NFL free agency. It's going hot and heavy, wild everywhere. Players are going from this team to that team with such abandon. But we want to break down the winners and losers of NFL free agency, and there's no one better to break it down with us than the man behind the Fantasy Football Pay Dirt podcast. When it comes back on the airwaves, you got to check it out on Apple Podcasts and so many other outlets. It's my good friend. It is Tyler Baker. What's going on, my friend?
Hey, buddy, how you doing? NCAA aside, how you doing?
I'm still feeling it. I'm feeling it, man. Like as I said on my own personal Facebook, that sound you heard, as far as it sounded like an explosion in the distance, that was my bracket blowing up on Thursday and Friday. So
I think that was a collective boom. A lot of brackets were blown up this weekend. It's March Madness in the NCAA. It's been March Madness in the NFL too. We just
hey,
had the start of the new league year, which means guys that are free agents are officially free agents and free to sign with basically the highest bidder, unless you're Drew Brees. And there were some winners, there were some losers, but I think it was just a lot of guys switching teams. It seemed like there was just a lot of just moving pieces, teams wanting to make changes, but very few teams, I think, so far in free agency have made huge moves. It seems like just a lot of juggling.
just a lot of juggling, a lot of lateral movement back and
Yeah.
forth, but no one seemingly on the surface getting that much better. In fact, we'll start with the marquee names as far
Mhm.
as free agency out there, as far as the position that everybody seems to talk about and the one that seems to pay out the most money, and that's the quarterback position. I
Yes.
know someone that was near and dear to your heart, Kirk
Mhm.
Cousins,
Yeah.
was commanding a huge salary, bigger than anything out
Yep.
there and talking about 5 years. Now he ultimately didn't get that, but a change in scenery to a quality playoff team
Yes.
like
Yes.
the Minnesota Vikings might pay off for them down the road.
Absolutely. And Kirk Cousins got a contract that you just don't see. It's fully guaranteed. You don't see fully guaranteed contracts to any player at any positions. Kirk Cousins, that's what he wanted. That's what he got.
But
My
he got less years for it. I think that was the trade-off.
Yeah, yeah, but now he's playing with a Minnesota team that was really good last year, and I think they're going to be really good again this year. They got Kirk Cousins. They also got Trevor Seaman kind of to back him up. But that team you're talking about, great offensive weapons. Dalvin Cook, I think, is a phenomenal athlete. A couple really good receivers there. Minnesota's going to be very tough to beat. I think you have to count them in the winning column. Another team that I think got better is the Philadelphia Eagles. They stacked up on the defensive line. That was already a really good defense on a Super Bowl winning team. They look like they are just they're going to be a handful to any team in the NFC East. They're going to be an absolute handful with that defensive line. I think the San Francisco 49ers, now they picked up Jerick McKinnon. And I think that's a very good fit for that Kyle Shanahan offense. I would put them in the winning category. But as far as fantasy purposes, it's difficult to really draw too many conclusions right now. We still have the NFL draft coming up. And depending on what teams do in the draft is really going to affect fantasy value. So I don't want to really look at any of these teams and say, hey, for fantasy purposes, this is a good fit because these teams are not complete for the 2018 season yet.
That's definitely some great points indeed. Once again, it is Tyler Baker from the Fantasy Football Pay Dirt podcast. When it comes back on the air,
Mhm.
you're going to be able to catch it each and every week. And as a fantasy football player out there, it's definitely a must. It's going to be available on Apple Podcasts and so many other different audio outlets. Tyler, I got to ask you,
Mhm.
like I said before, quarterback seems to be always what is the hot commodity. And I know teams like Denver, the New York
Yeah.
Jets, and so many others seem to play hopscotch and musical chairs with a lot of quarterbacks that either may have done okay or average, or from Josh McCown to Case Keenum to something that even performed well above their expectations. But were there any other positions out there that seemed to really strike gold, whether it be cornerbacks, receivers? In fact, I think even a Honey Badger surprisingly got cut from Arizona, but it seems like that he found a new home, and that team is all the better for it.
Yeah, there were a couple of teams that really filled positional needs. Chicago signing Allen Robertson and Taylor Gabriel at the wide receiver positions, I think, is big. Now they have some very good targets for Mitch Trubisky to throw to. Last season, that wide receiver core was horrible. Cameron Meredith went down, and it just all fell apart. So they did a really good job of addressing their needs. The Los Angeles Rams really, in my opinion, stepped up at the cornerback position, signing Aqib Talib and Marcus Peters. That is, in my opinion, I think the Rams are only getting better and better and better. I think they're going to be a very, very difficult team to beat next year. Whereas on the other side of it, I would say the Patriots maybe are slipping a little bit. I don't know. We'll have to see what they do in the draft. The New York Jets just made a move to move up from the number 6 to the number 3 spot in the draft. So it'll be very interesting to see what they do. I would assume that they're going to go after one of those quarterbacks. So there's just a lot happening right now in the NFL. A lot of really cool stuff. The Washington Redskins, of course, got Alex Smith. They got Paul Richardson, which I think was a very good signing for them. And they are going to re-sign Zach Brown in the linebacker position.
I had mentioned the Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu, getting surprisingly cut from the Arizona Cardinals, and I think latching on a extremely reasonable salary with the Houston Texans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's another team too, where they are that defense was already good. They have been rebuilding their offensive line and the secondary. So Houston, I would expect that they are definitely going to be a much better football team this year.
I can imagine so, indeed. Hopefully they can get things done on the offensive side in order to really, really shore up. And I think that was a real issue. Obviously, they couldn't move the ball at all, no matter how close they stayed, because of their defense. But definitely, one last thing. You mentioned briefly about New England possibly being a loser in this scenario as far as free agency so far at this point. Are there any other teams that stick out to you? Because I can mention one being the Miami Dolphins. I don't think they have fared so well in free agency. I don't think the trades that they made, giving up Jarvis Landry, even though it was for really, really a nice amount from the Cleveland Browns, I still think that you should have held on to a top-notch receiver like that. And I just don't think they've been able to make quite of an impact in free agency that they've wanted to. Is there any other one else that sticks out in your mind as far as team or teams that really just haven't fared so well in this past off season?
Well, nothing out of the Dallas Cowboys. They haven't done anything. There's a couple of teams that have been kind of quiet. We talked about the Pats. They let go of Deion Lewis and replaced him with Jeremy Hill. They lost Malcolm Butler. So arguably some of their best players have moved on. There's I think the New York Giants they are in a rebuilding phase, but they still want to try to win with Eli Manning. They went out and solidified the running back position with Jonathan Stewart, but that's a team that, where are they going? Are they going to go ahead and bite the bullet and rebuild now? Are they going to, try to take advantage of what remaining years Eli Manning has? I don't know. We'll see. Oakland making some interesting moves. We don't know what the Raiders are going to look like. John Gruden coming back into coaching, who knows? But they signed Jordy Nelson and Doug Martin. I like Jordy Nelson 4 or 5 years ago. I like Doug Martin 4 or 5 years ago. Not really sure what they're doing there in Oakland. We'll see. So if I had to put the finger on another one, I would probably say, in my opinion, the most intriguing franchise right now has got to be Cleveland. Getting Tyrod Taylor, Carlos Hyde, and Jarvis Landry. They have the number 1 and the number 4 pick in the draft. They have a ton of money. If they're going, they are absolutely poised to completely turn this franchise around. I hope that they take advantage of it because they have a golden opportunity.
That's true, and they traded those, like I said earlier, draft choices to Miami for Jarvis Landry, but they still got a treasure trove full of substantial amount of more of draft choices and high quality draft choices at that. Plus, like you said, the first 2 number 1 and number 4 picks in the first round. Plus, they get Tyrod Taylor, who both you and I thought was a very, very solid quarterback. Low interception ratio, moves the ball, very agile, could be something with a decent line. Very, very, could make the Cleveland Browns very competitive right away.
Absolutely. And whether they see him as a long-term solution, which I don't think that they do, what better stopgap player would you want than Tyrod Taylor, especially the way he played under the pressure that he played last season, where they were benching him and they kind of disrespected him and then made him go out and start again. And he handled it like a pro. He's a good football player. He's not going to put the team on his shoulders and take him to the next level, but he could be a very important piece to getting this franchise to the next level.
I agree indeed. Those are some great sound words there from my good friend. It is Tyler Baker from the Fantasy Football Patriot Podcast. One last question before we go, my friend, before we head on out. Thank you so much again for stopping by and talking to me, but I got to ask you, my friend, when it gets back going as far as fantasy football is concerned, why do people need to tune in to your show, the Fantasy Football Patriot Podcast?
It's quick, concise. I make it that way because I want people to just get the information and make their own decisions. I'm not going to tell anyone what to do with their team, but being informed and making informed decisions is the way to win at fantasy football. And what I do is I spend a lot of time looking over articles, watching game film, seeing what these beat writers are saying. And it takes experience to filter through what is just lip service, echo chamber stuff, and really getting down to what are the best decisions to make for your fantasy football team. And we also have a Facebook group. You can go on Facebook and type in Fantasy Football Patriot Podcast. That Facebook group is a great way to ask questions. I'll post articles up occasionally. And of course, you can check me out on the Pop Culture Cosmos.
That you can indeed, because not only are you here to talk fantasy football, but from time to time you show up and talk a lot about pop culture.
I know. I love the show, man. I love being a part of it. And hey, how about Black Panther? We were talking about how that could hit the $1 billion mark, and it is phenomenal. That movie is on fire.
It is. Fifth week in a row, it is domestically the #1 movie in America. It is truly doing well. It is now well over $1.1 billion at the box office. And, well above what even I thought. I thought it would max out at 900 million at the most. And I'm pleasantly surprised at its continued success. And I'll tell you what, I already got my tickets, man. Avengers.
War. Yeah. Oh, no yeah.
Yes.
That's going to be a good one.
It'll help with the sting from losing Virginia. Thanks a lot.
Oh man. I know. Hey, but there have been some very, very good games. I haven't been able to see all of them, but there have been some very good NCAA games, and it's only going to keep rolling. It's March Madness, baby.
It's March Madness, not only in the NCAA, but also as well the NFL.
Oh yeah.
And I'm so glad you got a chance to talk to me about all the great things going on in NFL free agency. Tyler, it's been so great again to having you on the show, and as always, being a part of the Pop